Buying GF, 20K. Hey, yeah. That's me. I'll be your girlfriend. 10K. You're really gonna haggle right now? For whatever reason, I just sent something off about you. I don't know. Something doesn't quite tickle my fancy. Okay, well, what can you... Look, man, I just really need that 20K, alright? Can you provide an in-depth analysis into the significance of RuneScape's original soundtrack written by Ian Taylor? Yes, the RuneScape soundtrack is monumental. So monumental that you can find it readily available for download on archive.org, a website dedicated to archiving and preserving important pieces of culture and otherworldly gems. You'll find the RuneScape soundtrack alongside other capsules of humanity like old family footage, literal cult sermons, and whatever this is. You'll also find archived works of art like Don Quixote and the Holy Bible. And honestly, I could not imagine a more appropriate place for this soundtrack to be. Not only did this soundtrack influence how making soundtracks would be approached forever onwards, but because of its scope and sheer magnitude at the time of its release. I'm not exaggerating. I genuinely believe RuneScape's soundtrack should be treated as one of the great contributions of modern human art to humanity. Allow me to set the scene. 2001, the rise of the browser game. On the internet, not only do you get around a lack of resources for distribution, but it also doesn't matter how big your game is. There's no need to make everything fit on a disc or cartridge. The CD-ROM, for example, utilized by the PlayStation 1, could hold a maximum of 700 megabytes. By loading your game in chunks, you can deliver content in appropriately sized packets of information to any computer, which users can load in through their internet connection. Once an area has been cleared, or a player moves to a new area on the map, another packet of information can be sent. Practically, it gives you much more freedom to play around with space and file sizes, and unfortunately, it allows anyone to make their games public. (2004). Enter RuneScape. Known then as RuneScape 2, and known now as Old School RuneScape, it exploded onto the scene, building on from its predecessor, RuneScape Classic. It delivered a vast game world the likes of which had never been seen before in a browser-based game, and gave many AAA games of the era a run for their money. Grand Theft Auto Vice City, 5.6 kilometers squared. RuneScape, about 5.7. Not too shabby for a browser-based game. However, the more land you have, the more space your game takes up. With increasingly higher resolutions in the open world genre, fitting more land into smaller file sizes becomes a challenge, especially when you're trying to fit your file onto a disc. The dominant consoles of the era, the Xbox and the PlayStation 2, storing files on DVD-ROMs, Jak and Daxter for PS2 takes up less than 1 gigabyte. Ratchet & Clank for PS2 takes up 3.5. DVD-ROMs were capable of storing 4.7 gigabytes on a single side. What this meant was that soundtracks couldn't cut too far into the space needed for games. The game needed to fit onto the DVD after all. Granted, space wasn't as much of an issue as in the cartridge days, but soundtracks were still rarely large, even in open world games. Especially in the later years of the life cycles of these consoles, file sizes really started pushing it, and cuts had to be made. Without any real competition from shooters or action games, which, let's be real, won't be giving too much thought to creating an expansive and immersive audio library. And with the open world games limited by disk space, RuneScape was in the unique position of capitalizing on its status as an online game to build up the volume of its soundtrack. An advantage of being an online game was that RuneScape could update whenever it wanted, meaning its audio library was constantly expanding, and space never had to be an issue. The finished RuneScape soundtrack alone takes up or about the space of 1 Ratchet & Clank for PS2, or 3 Jak and Daxter. When RuneScape came out, it debuted with 145 songs, most if not all composed by Ian Taylor, and throughout the years hundreds more were added. To put that in perspective, San Andreas, a game with a map size of almost 30 kilometers squared, was released with 155 songs, which would play across a number of radio stations. The track list was made up of licensed songs, with tracks like Hollywood Swingin' by Kool and the Gang, and songs like Express Yourself by NWA, I Don't Give a F by Tupac, with Dre Day by Dr. Dre, and All My Exes Live in Texas by Whitey Schaefer. EVE Online, released in 2003, has a long track list, taking 8.5 hours to complete. Not bad. With too many tracks to do a count for length myself, and with a healthy mix of songs ranging from 2 minutes to 5, an estimate for average track length in RuneScape is 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Listening to the RuneScape soundtrack front to back would take hours ahead of anything else even close. A feat all its own. A figure most musicians can only dream of accomplishing. Aren't you supposed to be funny or something? Look, I was just trying to cover all the bases, do my research, you know? I'm writing this script right now, just imagining how long it's already been. I'm not trying to keep people for a day, okay? I'm not trying to waste time. I'm trying to go bam bam, snap snap, rapid fire you with them facts. If you don't like it, then get back, cause I'm a dog and when I bark, I hear bones crack. Please don't keep rapping. But what RuneScape does with its soundtrack besides provide sheer volume is offer variety. Like any world, the map has different realms, each with their own cultural influences. And to match the aesthetic of each region, there are appropriate tracks to go along. From Varrock, you'll hear the appropriately titled Medieval. In Al Kharid, you'll hear Arabian. And in Barbarian Village, you'll hear Barbarianism. But between the distinct townships and regions, there are patches of wilderness. Patches of nothing, yet so crammed with nooks and crannies to explore. That sense of exploration and sense of wandering vastness is also captured well by Ian Taylor. Scape Main. Perhaps the most recognizable piece of music from the game, and RuneScape's greeting to players old and new. It's the perfect vignette of all RuneScape has to offer. Mystery, suspense, intrigue, and intense exploration. It works wonderfully as the music to RuneScape's front cover. A look under the hood gives some insight into this sense of restless excitement. A barrage of triplets played by what I think is a lyre. They keep the momentum of the piece ever so slightly shifted forward to the beat. Playing 3 notes in the same time where there would normally be 2 is always a recipe for excitement, given the slightly offbeat nature of the triplet. A trumpet plays the melody, using triplets of its own in the key of D minor. Meanwhile, the rest of the piece plays in the key of C major, transitioning to G minor. I don't understand. What do you mean you don't understand? Key? Triplet? The notes are moving really fast, and the lead has a different sense of arrival and rest from the rest of the piece. I'm feeling a light to decent confused. I don't even know if you're worth 10K, to be honest. What? Go on, keep going. Ian Taylor wasn't lazy while composing the soundtrack for RuneScape. His music has form, structure, motifs, sections, solos, ensemble performances, counterpoint, and a slew of other musical jargon. It's not just slapped together for the sake of quantity. Most importantly, they all sound distinct from one another. The sense of distinctness between tracks gives RuneScape the illusion of being bigger than it actually is. Because repetition of musical ideas is kept to a minimum, it's hard to feel like you've already experienced something, which adds to the sense of discovery. RuneScape's soundtrack isn't afraid to experiment with genre. It covers a lot of bases. Salsa, classical, orchestral, narco. The list is long and expansive. It's not afraid to borrow musical ideas either. Referencing nautical musical traditions from the 18th century, RuneScape adopts them quite well into a port township of its own. In the year 2018, the browser-based game is virtually all but dead. Even browser-based Titan RuneScape has switched over to a client application, only offering browser support on Internet Explorer. As the old saying goes, I'd rather die. While not the juggernaut it once was, but able to maintain a steady player base, RuneScape's soundtrack continues to expand with updates. Ian Taylor still writes as a composer, now with added live instruments. Regardless of RuneScape's current status, the soundtrack lives on through what it influences. These days, no open world game is expected to be complete without a helping hand of lots of varied music to sell an expansive land. The influences are there. You just gotta look. A game called Orake, for example, was so influenced by RuneScape's music that it decided to use the exact one. Until Jagex got involved. I don't know. That was kinda... Woo-wee, that was a long one, wasn't it? I'm reclined in my chair again, just rocking back and forth. How are you doing? I'm opening up the floor again, taking suggestions. As you may have noticed, I took an extra week to do this video, cause I just wanted to make sure I did a good job. And I'm gonna be honest with you, it was pretty nice actually. I don't think weekly uploads is healthy. Maybe I'll switch to doing like 3 uploads a month instead of 4 now, and then that way I'll have more time to really flesh out my ideas. Cause recently I've been feeling like I'm under some kind of rush. Anyways, I've been talking too long, so I'm gonna go now. See you later, bye!